It's been 3 months since the iPhone 16 Pro has been released, and it's time to ignore the haters. Yeah, iPhone hate, it's nothing new, and it's been around since the original iPhone was released nearly 17 years ago, but this year feels a little different than normal because I have seen a lot of criticism online about the iPhone 16 Pro in particular this year, and as I use my iPhone 16 Pro Max, I start to question, did I miss something in my initial review? Why are so many people reacting to this phone so badly, and why are people disappointed in this iPhone release when I am not? Now, this isn't just some video defending Apple. I have fairly criticized things that I do not like about my iPhone 16 Pro Max, and I even will do that a little bit in today's video, but as someone that tries to always bring a fair and balanced perspective coupled together with my own experience, I can't ignore what I view as an unfair look at Apple's flagship phone. Now, I think the root cause of a lot of frustration with the iPhone 16 is due to boredom. You all live boring lives. You're unfulfilled with life, and you think buying a new shiny iPhone is going to suddenly make your life more exciting, but then you have to come to terms with the fact that
life sucks, and then you die.
Sorry, maybe I took that a little too far. I didn't mean that. That was a joke. No, the real dilemma for the users purchasing the iPhone 16 is the natural state of the entire smartphone industry, but to an even more extreme case with Apple smartphones in particular. Most users, unless you're crazy like me, are probably on a 4-year upgrade cycle at this point, so if you bought an iPhone 12, it's likely that this year is your upgrade year, and if you did in fact buy a new iPhone 16 or an iPhone 16 Pro, you have, for the first time in the entire history of the iPhone, bought an iPhone with kind of the same design as your 4-year-old model. At least if you're looking at it from the back or from the sides, the design philosophy has stayed very consistent over the last 4 years. However, just because the design is similar doesn't mean nothing has improved. In fact, if you look at all the refinements Apple has added over the years to this iPhone body design, you'll see that the bezels have drastically gone down, screen sizes have increased, there's been changes in the literal curvature of the iPhone design to make it more comfortable to hold, and even material changes that have made the Pro iPhone series lighter to hold. And that big iPhone 16 Pro Max display is something I still love looking at when I'm watching videos or playing games. Now, those aren't radical changes, they are slight improvements that have been made over time that add up to a more substantial upgrade. But because those improvements didn't come with a radical new design change, it's really easy for most people to dismiss the progress that has been made on the iPhone 16 and previous iPhone iterations. It also ignores the big changes that have been made to the inside of the iPhone that have made my experience with the 16 Pro Max much better. I think this picture highlights that change pretty well. On the right is the iPhone 15 Pro's logic board, and on the left is the iPhone 16 Pro's logic board. And you can see it's quite a bit smaller. This is a very big design change, especially for a year-over-year change that most people don't really appreciate because they're not looking on the inside of their phone. Not only is shrinking the components down better so you can fit more components inside the phone, but the more densely packed 16 Pro logic board also brings more improvements to it, including a bigger metal cover that transfers heat more effectively for better thermal management. And come to think of it, even running my iPhone 16 Pro Max on very inefficient betas for most of the year, I can't think of a single time my iPhone has ever gotten hot to the touch. That's even with all the added performance of the A18 chip, and that added performance didn't lead to a chip that was less efficient, it led to a chip that was more efficient over last year's chip. And with only a 5% bump in battery capacity this year, I wouldn't blame you if you thought that the battery life would be similar to that of the old 15 Pro Max, but that added efficiency, especially from the chip, coupled together with that slightly bigger battery, added up to a real-world huge battery boost. And that is without a doubt the single biggest improvement I have noticed on my iPhone 16 Pro Max compared to the last 3 iPhone iterations that I have owned. On this model, the battery life finally feels like it's enough to power even my most demanding days, and that is not something I could say with the 15 Pro Max. The most impressive part of that battery gain is I'm still noticing the improvements in battery life even when I am running iOS 18 beta software, which is notorious for being very inefficient and leading to increased battery drain. Even with a beta installed on the 16 Pro Max, I still think I'm having better battery life than just running like a normal build of iOS 18 on my 15 Pro Max, or I guess back then it would have been iOS 17. Now, besides efficiency, there's also the general power increase that the A18 Pro chip is providing. I know most people aren't going to really notice the speed improvement that iPhone chip upgrade brings, because iPhone chips have been fast for a while now, and that is generally true. You're not going to notice big differences in most day-to-day uses, but there are plenty of applications for this increased iPhone power. The area I notice it the most year over year is with gaming performance. The 15 Pro, to that phone's credit, was the first iPhone able to play higher-end AAA level games, and while it was capable of it, it could still get choked up on those more demanding game titles. I have noticed that with the A18 Pro chip on the 16 Pro, it handles these games much better, resulting in less hiccups and even smoother gameplay, and I started carrying around a dedicated gaming controller setup like this Razer controller that really transforms the gaming experience, making my iPhone feel more like a dedicated handheld console, like a Nintendo Switch or a Valve Steam Deck. In fact, the hardware specs on a 16 Pro Max are better than a Nintendo Switch. These game titles wouldn't run on a Nintendo Switch. It's not powerful enough. All right, here it comes every year. It's always the same thing, right? The camera improvements on the 16 Pro, that's what makes this phone worth it. Well, I'm actually not going to go on about the camera improvements on the 16 Pro that much. And it's honestly not a reason why I would buy this phone. Now, it's not that I was disappointed in the 16 Pro's camera system this year, but it didn't change the way I use my camera like my iPhone 15 Pro did. Sure, there's a new 48 megapixel sensor in the ultra-wide-angle camera, but honestly, it hasn't led to a drastic improvement in my ultra-wide photos, and I'm still very hesitant to use the ultra-wide-angle sensor because the main lens generally just looks better. Now, the 5x lens I still use a lot, it still looks good, but again, that is very similar to the 15 Pro's 5x experience. There are a few software tweaks here and there, there's updates to photographic styles, which I do like as a feature, but these are results I could technically get with an editing program with a little bit more time. Even the addition of 120 FPS video recording is a huge technical achievement, and it's nice, I like having it, but it really hasn't changed the way that I use my iPhone camera quite like it did last year with the addition of external video recording to an external drive and the addition of ProRes log video. Adding that to the iPhone 15 Pro, it was just an absolute game changer. So last year, I felt like the improvements to the camera system were much bigger than what they put on the 16 Pro this year. There is one upgrade on the 16 Pro that doesn't get enough love, and that is the studio quality microphones. These are, without a doubt, the best sounding smartphone microphones on the market, and they make even simple voice memos or voice notes sound like they were recorded on a dedicated microphone. And while it may not sound like a big deal for someone that is shooting content, and with how popular short form content is right now, before where I would feel like I would need a dedicated microphone to film some of those, now I kind of don't. I just use the onboard microphones on my 16 Pro because they're good enough and they're hassle-free, and I am constantly surprised how clear the iPhone microphones pick up my voice. And even when I'm the one behind the camera, my voice sounds extra crisp that I don't think most people would realize I was recording it on a smartphone microphone. Now listen, I don't have to rehash a full review 3 months later, but these are a lot of the updates that I really like on my 16 Pro that have made a pretty big difference over even my old 15 Pro, and that's just a year-over-year difference. And without a doubt, the biggest disappointment for most reviewers with the iPhone 16 Pro is the experience with Apple Intelligence so far. I think that's mostly because at this point, we've just seen the basic Apple Intelligence features make its way to the 16 Pro, and the basic features that are here aren't revolutionary or that exciting. In fact, I made a whole video talking about how most of these features can already be found and work better on existing third-party apps, and how Apple may have the worst image generation in the entire AI game. Still, there are some highlights for me even with this limited release of Apple Intelligence. Genmoji does work well, and it's fun and easy to create new emojis. The photo cleanup tool does a fast and pretty good job at removing background subjects. The ChatGPT integration into Siri has been pretty solid so far. And also that new Siri animation, yeah, it just looks sick. That alone makes Apple Intelligence worth it. Not seriously.
Sorry, I don't understand.
Oh, okay. Way to prove my point. Seriously though, the promise of a smarter Siri still isn't here even on the newly released iOS 18.2. And this is probably the feature that will make or break Apple Intelligence for everyone. And that is what excited me at the Apple Intelligence announcement. It was the thing I was looking forward to the most, the ability of Siri to be able to understand personal context, which would lead to a much smarter virtual assistant that would be able to go through your phone, find calendar appointments, find out from your mail when your mom's flight is landing, those sort of magic things that Siri could all of a sudden find and then surface to you, bring up relevant information, use all the tools and information available on your phone, and then integrate that into Siri. That would be a very powerful experience if it works well. The problem is we don't even know if it works well or works at all or works sometimes because Apple hasn't shipped that part of Apple Intelligence yet. And it's not even rumored to come out until, I don't know, like 3 months from now, maybe even longer. But despite those shortcomings, Apple Intelligence doesn't take anything away from you, and it does grant quite a lot of new features that were not available on other iPhones up until this point. And with more features still to come and the fast advancement of AI, it's not unreasonable to think that in a year, a lot of the problems that we have with Apple Intelligence today will be fixed or improved upon. And let's discount Apple Intelligence, right? Let's say it's not on the iPhone 16 Pro. Well, even then, I still think the 16 Pro has a lot of meaningful upgrades. It's got a bigger display, better thermals, better battery life, a more powerful chip, an improved camera, improved microphones, and even small quality of life updates like Wi-Fi 7. I didn't mean for that to actually add up to 7. That was just circumstance. That was coincidence. I'm sorry about that. All of those updates add up to a phone that does feel improved upon. It does feel more substantial than maybe you might have thought. Is it the biggest iPhone update ever? No, but it's also not a small update that a lot of the haters make it out to be. So yeah, in my experience, ignore the haters. The iPhone 16 Pro, after these 3 months, has been a really solid improvement, even over my iPhone 15 Pro Max. But let me know in the comments below, do you own an iPhone 16 or an iPhone 16 Pro? And what has your experience been? And do you agree with me that the hate on this iPhone is a little unjustified? Or do you disagree with me and you think the hate is justified and you hate me as well? Damn, that's deep.